It is another day. Logic and Larry is coming to you from Newark, New Jersey, next to the train line, and we endeavor to be a light of logic in a world of ignorant darkness. We are not going to stop speaking, talking, do what we got to do with the insanity that's going on out in this world. And it is insane. I mean, it's a bit comical with the amount of wild what's going on, but we are going to get into it. Everybody should know that everything I say in this podcast is strictly my own personal opinion as a private citizen. I do not speak to you in any official capacity whatsoever. What I say does not in any way reflect the opinions or positions of any other person or entity. I'm speaking to you about matters of public concern and giving you my own private opinion, but you know we keep it real. So much to talk about since we last spoke. Trump has taken office and he's running amok. Elon Musk, can we just talk about Elon Musk really quick? Elon Musk is not an elected official. Elon Musk is basically a random billionaire who Trump has tapped to run some juvenile sophomoric company named DOGE, which is the same thing as like Dogecoin and Doge this or that. It's like, you know, a little boy. And can we just set aside memo to Gen Z really quick? Masculinity is not sitting in your basement playing Call of Duty in your t-shirt, eating pizza bagels, making lewd and crude toilet jokes on incel subreddits, okay? Masculinity is knowing how to cook a good steak, knowing how to pick a good cigar, knowing how to light it properly, you know, knowing how to tie a Windsor knot, okay? So you got Elon Musk with like a t-shirt and a hat on in the Oval Office. Like, he's not the what is this a joke? This is like idiocracy. This is idiocracy. Elon Musk with his hat on and his kid running around the office or doing a press conference in the Oval Office, explaining what he's doing. Bro, you're not the president. Trump's sitting there just listening. Who, by the way, Trump temporarily traded out the desk in that office, apparently because Musk's kid is wiping boogers on the desk. I mean, what are we doing? What are we looking at? What the hell are we doing in this country? So Musk has gone out now, and what he's done, and he's basically sent these little 20-something-year-old tech kids into various federal agencies and has been, I guess you could call it, he's been auditing these federal agencies, you know, to see if there's any, you know, abuse, any waste, any issues with it. And then he's been, you know, unilaterally kind of telling Trump, and Trump via executive order is, you know, stripping these entities of funding, consolidating these entities, laying off workers en masse from various federal agencies and departments. We recently learned that 1,000 or more national park workers have been laid off. Research funding has been halted in the medical fields, important research into cancer, heart disease, mental health. These things have been frozen, and you got to understand that these funds don't just go to employ people at federal government jobs and federal agencies, right? These funds also trickle down into university grants, grants at the local level, grants to the private sector, loans to the private sector, funding for research, you know, that is necessary to advance our society and advance our country. I don't think people really understand, or maybe choose not to. The reason we have viable hospitals and medical facilities in virtually every neighborhood across this country, the reason we have power technology that powers the electricity in your home, that gets you communication data from your TV, your internet, you know, the chips in your cell phone, all of these innovations that make us a functional society, one of the, you know, greatest evolving societies of all time with one of the highest human standards of living in human history, is this research and this innovation and just killing. You may not understand innovation. If your day job doesn't entail research, or you don't understand what goes on in the upper echelon of academia or the federal government, yeah, you might not understand it. And it might all be a big joke to you. But the reason you could easily, seamlessly go to work and come home at night and you have all these amenities and safety nets around you is because of the innovation that's been laid out. And If you don't know, you should read the history books that private-public partnerships have been integral to this innovation from the beginning of our society. The government and the private sector have been exchanging funds and innovation since the beginning of American history, which has led to all these things. So simply gutting them without any recourse, you might think it's all fun, but it's going to have long-term effects. And it's certainly going to affect America's ability to keep pace with other rising powers like China and Russia, who, by the way, are cheering this on because this is great for them. And if you don't think they're planting propaganda in our social media, I mean, every other post on Facebook is some troll account telling me about how great Musk is or Trump is. And there's a bunch of people eating it up. You're eating Chinese slop. They're flushing it down the cesspool, and you're gobbling it up and swallowing it whole. You got to wake up. You got to wake up. You got to wake up. So anyway, Musk is going into these agencies, and one of the main things I'm seeing with these arguments that's occurring is Musk goes into these agencies. For instance, he goes into USAID, which is the biggest, forerunner of this whole narrative and propaganda that's coming out. And he's saying things like, we found that they're funding Sesame Street in Iraq, and they are financing, condom proliferation to Hamas. And, you have people out here retweeting and regurgitating and sharing that, look, there's fraud. Look at all this fraud Musk is finding. Fraud is, Sesame Street in Iraq, and fraud is condoms. The definition of fraud is stealing something illegitimately without the proper channels or explanation for where the money is going. That's fraud, right? Like, I'm going to give condoms to people in another country, but you don't give the condoms. You just put the money in your pocket. That's fraud. Or I'm going to host a Sesame Street show. You're going to give me the money for that. I'm never going to run the show. I'm just going to put the money in my pocket. That's fraud, right? Running actual Sesame Street in Iraq is not fraud, and it's not abuse. Now, you can sit there and say you disagree with the program. You can say that in your humble opinion, Sesame Street in Iraq is wasteful spending that you don't think should happen, that should be exposed and cut. But the process to do that, I wouldn't have a problem if Trump wanted to hire Musk to do an audit of all federal agencies, give him whatever clearances he needs to go into there, and compile lists and expense accounts and budgetary reports on what money is being spent and where that money is going, and then have an open hearing in Congress in front of the American people through the proper channels with the proper debate to determine whether we collectively think that these programs are viable or necessary, or whether they're wasteful, and if they're wasteful, to cut them. And I feel the same way about, public sector workers. If you want to do an audit on public sector workers and you determine that various middle management or other positions, probationary positions, are irrelevant or redundant or unneeded, and you want to have an open debate through the proper channels as to whether those jobs should stay intact or whether the American people should get some savings by cutting those jobs, well, go for it. But that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that he's unilaterally cutting the programs, and people are out there running amok saying, look, he's getting rid of all this fraud. You might not agree with Iraqi Sesame Street, but here's why you put Iraqi Sesame Street in place. Because you just went into a country, you toppled a dictator in Saddam Hussein, you toppled a regime. There's been infighting in that country for the years ever since. And you are in a battle for hearts and minds. The people in Iraq could either grow up to absolutism, authoritarianism. They could grow up to think badly of America, think badly of Western civilization. All you people out there on this Trump tear who claim to love what he stands for, you claim to be such, standard bearers and fighters for Western civilization. Well, what better standard bearer, what better way to proliferate Western civilization and Western values than via children's programming? If you have Sesame Street in Iraq, then children are going to learn Western values from a young age. So that's chess, right? But I find a lot of checkers players to be currently running the country, right? Trump is a checkers guy. He's not a chess guy. He doesn't have the mental acumen or the forethought to be a chess player. And so you're seeing a lot of checkers going on. And a lot of people are out there cheering on the checkers game. But they're not understanding the chess that's being played. And the chessboard is being destroyed. And it's playing into the hands of our adversaries and those of us who don't want us to succeed. And you're cheering it thinking it's a great thing because you don't have the acumen to play chess. You're a checkers guy. And that's a real problem right now. It's a real problem in the country. And it's frustrating to sit back and look at. But just remember, just because you don't like a program or you don't think that that program is a good idea, that doesn't make the program fraudulent, right? Some liberals may have objections to voucher programs that use public school dollars to fund vouchers for children to attend private religious schools. If that's a valid statute that was passed, and that's a program that's being implemented through the democratic and legislative process, then that's not fraud. That's not stealing. That's simply a program you don't agree with. Now, you can take that argument through the proper channels and challenge it, but it's not fraud just because you don't agree with it, right? So this idea that Musk is rooting out all this fraud, it's a misnomer. There's no fraud. You know, USAID was specifically created, and that particular section of it was created in order to disperse funds that had been allocated for foreign aid by Congress. And there are certain programs that they deemed, worthwhile to pursue with the funds they were allotted to pursue such goals. If you don't agree with it, then take it to the budget committee, take it through the legislative process, take it to the media and discuss it. But simply unilaterally eliminating it and then claiming that it was fraud is a misnomer. And it's, anybody scared of debating these things, anybody scared of bringing these things out in the open and actually discussing them is probably afraid that their position is not as sound as they proclaim it to be. And that's a real problem. That is a real problem. So that needs to be addressed. But, what's even more egregious, I find, you have Musk sitting in the Oval Office, and he's basically answering questions from the president's office to the media, but he's not even elected to be anything. He hasn't been appointed to be anything. He hasn't been nominated to be anything, but yet he's in the Oval Office basically giving a speech and answering questions. Now, here's what's egregious to me. Congress is supposed to be a check and balance, right? When this country was founded, and all these people out there who proclaim to be such rugged patriots and so about freedom and so about democracy, but yet freedom necessarily entails, especially in the minds of our founding fathers, especially in the United States of America, freedom entails the ability to rein in an excessively ambitious executive and the ability to have checks and balances where the court systems and the congressional system and the executive are constantly in a tug of war so that no one gets too much power. Well, Trump wants to appoint Musk to just unilaterally dissolve these federal programs and these federal jobs, and Trump is just running through the Parks Department, running through the IRS, running through, with no regard for how this is going to affect everyday people. You want your tax return? How fast do you want your tax return? How fast do you want to get somebody on the phone to help you with your tax return? You want to go to a national park? You want to be rescued if you get into trouble at a national park? You want to sit in long lines, or do you want access to resources at national parks? I mean, these things affect you, and no one's paying attention. But Democrats in Congress, this is what really gets me. Democrats in Congress moved to subpoena Elon Musk so that he would have to at least show up to Congress and answer questions about what he was doing. Yet, Republicans in Congress, rather than doing their job and saying, yeah, we're Congress, we're not just an arm of the executive branch, we're not just one of the president's men, we have jobs that are important. We get paid a hefty salary to do a job for the American people and for the people of our districts. Let's bring Elon Musk in and let's ask him questions. And I'm confident that if you ask him questions, he'll have a good answer because I agree with what he's doing. Instead of allowing for the subpoena to happen so Musk can come before Congress and talk, Republicans successfully defeated a subpoena to Congress so that Musk would not have to appear publicly and not have to answer any questions. Instead, he's in the Oval Office with a baseball hat. Somebody teach this guy some decorum. with a baseball hat, answering questions and not knowing what the hell he's talking about, getting away from himself to the point that even Trump had to correct Musk and say it's not all fraud. A lot of it is wasteful because it's not fraud. But the way that this guy, Musk, is just running through federal agencies and Trump is just laying people off in masses is really disturbing. And I don't think it's necessarily disturbing because I disagree with it or because I disagree with Trump's agenda. I genuinely think that Trump is not of the sound enough mind. Like, he released, do you realize Donald Trump pardoned 1,500 January 6 rioters, 1,500 people who were criminally convicted of participating in an attack on our Capitol. And when they asked Trump, there was people here who had prior rape charges, people who had violent criminal records. Why didn't you go through it on a case-by-case basis? Trump just says, well, that's time consuming. I didn't have the time. Who has time for all that? I just figured let them all go. This is the guy that we're dealing with. So when they put these executive orders in front of him and he's cutting federal employees and taking over federal agencies, it's not this guy who doesn't have the time to look at a case-by-case basis. It's not this guy who's too lazy to actually start compromising and getting in the weeds on legislative agenda, but just sits at his desk all day and signs whatever piece of paper they put in front of him. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing, so it's not like I disagree with his overall agenda. I think it's just people who genuinely don't know what the hell they're doing, are actually irresponsible, are actually incompetent, are actually don't have the requisite mind power or knowledge base to do any of the things they're doing, and they're just running amok. Remember when I told you that if I was on a plane, I'd want the pilot to be the best pilot he could be because I wanted it to land, therefore I was rooting for Trump? Well, I'm telling you that these pilots that he has never went to flight school, have no business flying a plane, and that's who's in charge of the country right now. And it's friggin' ridiculous. It's not scary. It's not hiding your shell. It's ridiculous. And it's time to start calling it out. It's ridiculous. Knock it off. Tell them to knock it off. I'm sick of sitting around watching these guys do this nonsense and act like they know what they're doing. Tell them to sit down and knock it off. So you got this guy running amok through these federal agencies. And this is what I find interesting, too, is that Trump is just sitting there signing whatever they put in front of him. And he's commandeering the United States Postal Service is the next thing on his agenda. He took over the Kennedy Center. Here's the thing. We knew what the plan would be. We knew that the plan would be to have mass federal layoffs, to consolidate power in the executive with sycophants, to put the executive in a position where no one would check his power, where the federal government and their various duties to the American people were reined in and minimized. And we knew how they would go about it. We knew what they would do. We knew why they would do it. We knew what their end game was. And we had that all documented to us and laid out. And that was called and is called Project 2025. And Donald Trump is running amok right now with Project 2025. He's appointed people from Project 2025 to be in control of his government, and they are implementing in record speed Project 2025's goals. Now, most Americans who read Project 2025 did not agree with Project 2025, and Trump lied to you because that's all he ever does is lie through his teeth. He lied and said he didn't know anything about Project 2025. Project 2025 was not his agenda. Project 2025 was not his mission. And what did you do? You swallowed the crap whole like they've been shoveling into your mouth all the time, and you're still munching on it like cereal in the morning. Trump shoveled 2025 and down your throat, lied to you that he didn't know anything about it, and now that's exactly what he's implementing because he's a dishonest liar. A dishonest liar. And that's what he's doing. Okay? And so he's running amok, doing everything 2025 said they were going to do, and you are sitting there like a dunce because you believe that he didn't know anything about it. Now, you might cheer it on, but again, stop playing checkers. Start learning the game of chess. I could teach you. Entailed in this belief, I think, with a lot of people is that, let's talk about what happened in New York with Mayor Eric Adams, right? So Eric Adams was indicted for criminal actions, and there were more indictments supposedly coming due to Adams covering up and destroying evidence. And what essentially happened, according to a letter from the top United States attorney in Southern District of New York, was Trump officials met with Eric Adams, and they basically said, well, if you do what we want, if you implement our immigration agenda, then we will dismiss the criminal case against you, but we're going to dismiss it without prejudice. And what does that mean? If you dismiss something with prejudice, that means you cannot bring the charges again, right? But if you dismiss it without prejudice, that means at any time you can bring the charges back. So what does that do? That basically says, we'll dismiss this case against you, Mayor Adams. You ever don't do what we want, if you ever step out of line, if you ever disobey us, we're simply going to prosecute you again because we can bring the charges back at any time. Now, I think the problem in this country is that so many people have been brought up in this environment, this selfish environment, and this is what I think is interesting. All the people that claim to be railing against the everybody gets a trophy generation and everybody's entitled to something generation, one of the biggest examples of that are right-wing people now, right? You're entitled to your own truth. You're entitled to have a say, even if you're not very educated. You're entitled to argue, even if you're not in the level of prestige to bring itself to the arena. And you know, you are entitled to get yours at any cost to anybody, right? That's the society overall, and that's the left and right. That's everybody, right? We've now become this society where getting yours is so much better than your duty to the people, your duty to your office, your duty to your position, your own integrity, your own transparency, your own honesty. It's just get yours any way you can, and if you got to step on people, you got to lie, you got to cut deals, you got to cut throats figuratively, you got to do any of that, then you do it to get yours because all that matters is getting yours. And so I think a lot of people out there who aren't in these positions, who aren't involved in law, who aren't involved in criminal prosecution, who aren't involved in the government, who aren't involved in these positions, they really believe that what goes on every day is that people are cutting each other's throats figuratively to get to the top, and it's a zero-sum game, and whoever has the power takes the power. And that is a very cynical way of thinking. And I'm telling you, that's not actually how things work. That might be how you think it works, and maybe that's how you live your life. But that's not how it actually works. The only people who do things like that in positions of power, especially in, prosecution positions and whatnot, are corrupt people who get prosecuted and disbarred for that type of activity. That's not an acceptable way of being. That's not an acceptable way via the ethics codes, via case law, via statutes. It's simply not what happens. You might think that's what happens. So when Trump makes a deal like that with Adams, a lot of you out there are saying, well, that's great. He got immigration done. We don't care that it's immoral. We don't care that it's unethical. That's just how things go. You have to make deals to get things done. But that's not how it actually works, nor is it supposed to. There is government officials like the president or the governor or anybody is not allowed to use criminal prosecution as a bribery tool to get other public officials to do what they want. That's antithetical to everything that is honest and rational and makes sense in this country or anywhere at any time in human history in the world. And so several federal prosecutors resigned and refused to move to dismiss the Adams case because it was unjust, improper, and immoral. And this guy, Emil Bove, he threatens to fire everybody in a unit in D.C., not New York, in D.C., unless they write the motion and then he signs it and submits it to the judge. And now the judge wants to haul these officials in front of him and explain why they're dismissing the case, because there's no real rationale to dismiss it that's justified. It's just Trump wants to do this, and this is what his administration wants, and we work for the administration. That is the antithesis. It's so against everything right. It's against everything right. But that's what they're doing. So now Eric Adams, who's a Democrat, by the way, a corrupt Democrat, allegedly corrupt Democrat, is getting deals from Donald Trump. Is this what Trump voters wanted when they elected Trump? Is this draining the swamp? Helping Democrats? Helping Democrats get away from corrupt criminal acts? And then Trump just decides to pardon former disgraced Illinois governor Rod Blagojevich, who's another Democrat who was corrupt, tried to sell a Senate seat. He pardons him, another corrupt Democrat. What kind of draining the swamp? What kind of justice and truth is that? Just like I said a few episodes ago in the gaslighting episode about claiming truth when the truth is right in front of you and it's the opposite of what this guy's doing. And it makes me want to rip my hair out. Now, I truly think, and I've been paying attention. I've been paying attention to conversations online. I've been paying attention to the way people approach me, the way people approach these topics, and I can honestly say that there are a lot of people, even if they had at one time sympathized with Trump, even if they still sympathize with Trump, even if they sympathize with the MAGA movement on some level, they are now all of a sudden delving into reputable articles, delving into reputable journalism. They are starting to see for themselves that a lot of what's going on really isn't in the interests of what's good. It's not in the interests of what's right. It's not in the interests of what's moral. And whether they will admit it or not, they are slowly waking up because at heart, they are good people. At heart, they are chess players. At heart, they are intelligent people. And they know, deep down when looking at these things, they know that this is wrong. And we need more of those people to wake up. That's why we need to continue to speak. We need more of these people to be paying attention to these things that are going on and wake up and eventually make a stand and say, this is not what America is. This is not who we are as a people. This is wrong. This is lies. Why are you feeding lies and shoving it down my throat and expecting me to continue to pretend that you're feeding me caviar? They are waking up little by little, and it's important that we continue to get this news out and this word out because it's egregious that now allegedly corrupt Democrats are getting pardoned. There's no justification. There was no justification for January 6th, but there's no justification for this either. Okay? And now it's not just people that they root for, it's the other side. Now, Trump has jammed through his nominees, and now he's nominated the current interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Washington, D.C. Now, the way Washington, D.C. works, they don't have a county prosecutor or a state prosecutor like most other jurisdictions have. So in Washington, D.C., the prosecutor for that entire district is the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C. Currently, Trump has appointed this guy, Ed Martin, to be the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C. Now, the guy doesn't have any prosecutorial experience. The guy was basically a blowhard in Missouri, even though he grew up in some place in West Jersey somewhere. Actually went to St. Peter's Prep, as far as I know, which is kind of funny, New Jersey, Jersey City. And he's now the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C. Now, he's been appointed by Donald Trump. He's been nominated to be the permanent U.S. Attorney for the District of Washington, D.C., and the hearings are going to come up. Now, the Senate has been absolutely pretty much useless on these hearings. They ask questions, the nominees lie, and then they push them through based on whatever political deal they made, again, abdicating their responsibilities. The only nominee they defeated before he even took it to the rim was Matt Gaetz, thank God. But he's going to be up for nomination soon, and I think you really should pay attention to it because this is a guy who condoned January 6th, said the rioters got a little out of hand but were mostly peaceful people, defended some of the January 6th defendants. He has written letters to DOGE, to Elon Musk, saying that he's going to defend DOGE through the legal process. He's now said that he's launching a probe into statements that Chuck Schumer and Robert Garcia, a Democrat from California, because of hyperbolic figurative speech they used in criticizing Musk and criticizing certain things going on with the administration, including past statements Schumer made about the Supreme Court. Now, these are government officials exercising debate and hyperbole in Congress in order to bring up criticism, valid criticism of things they think need attention. And the prosecutor, The prosecutor who swore an oath to obey the Constitution, protect every amendment, including the First Amendment, who swore an oath to do what's right and to be honest, is targeting these people for exercising their First Amendment rights, and as basically looking like he's going to use his office as a weapon for Trump. And if you look at this guy, Ed Martin's Twitter, I encourage you to go to his X account. Ed Martin retweeted somebody who said that nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the Department of Justice has to be independent of the executive branch. Now, he's right. It doesn't explicitly state it in the Constitution that the Department of Justice should be separate from the executive branch. But what Martin is saying is that, yeah, we don't have to be unchecked outside of the purview of Trump. We don't have to put checks on what Trump does. We don't have to be independent. We can do Trump's bidding. We can be an arm of the executive to enforce what he wants. If you guys don't understand world history, let me spell it out for you. When criminal prosecutorial entities use their power to persecute and prosecute people who dissent from the executive, that is the first step and maybe the biggest step toward tyrannical, absolutist government. You cannot have a prosecutor in D.C. who's in the pocket of Trump and wants to persecute people who call Trump out. This has to be spoken about. This has to be spoken about by attorneys across the United States, by citizens. This guy who's trying to attack people for criticizing DOGE, turning it into threat investigations, does not deserve in any way, shape, or form to be permanently installed as the United States Attorney for the District of D.C. I know this was a rant of an episode. I didn't intend it to be a rant, but I guess I had a lot of emotion pent up, guys, because I try to stay as quiet as possible. I try to not bog myself down in this nonsense. I try to keep my chin up and simply function, with tact. But when they're decimating our national parks, decimating our research capabilities in the federal government with nobody to hold them to account, no open debate, no transparency, when allegedly corrupt people are being let off the hook for no reason other than quid pro quo, which is completely contrary to ethical ways to approach the law, when incompetent people who don't even have proper grammar are being nominated for important positions that hold people's lives in the balance, you think it's a joke? Now, I understand all the nonsense people wanted to use. Oh, it's lawfare, it's persecution going after Trump. I encourage you to actually look at the facts of the Trump investigations. Actually look at the facts. Don't just color it by your proclivities and affinities for Trump. Look at the actual facts of what was investigated. He did do illegal, bad things. That's why he was investigated. Real lawfare, real persecution is going after people who didn't do anything illegal just because they don't like your chosen king. That's lawfare. You wonder why why Biden did a blanket pardon for all these people, which, by the way, I don't agree with the way pardons were used with Biden for Hunter. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the way Trump uses pardons. But the reason Biden pardoned these people preemptively was not because they did something wrong. It's because Ed Martin and Trump, they're going to go after you just because you disagree with something they said, just because you don't support Trump, just because you're critical of DOGE. That's why you need protections for people. Now, again, I apologize for this rant. I apologize for how unorganized it might have been. But at the end of the day, these things need to be said, and they need to be said by somebody. And as long as you're being honest, as long as you're obeying the law, as long as you're respecting the sanctity of whatever it is you do every day, as long as you care about your neighbor and the community, and you care about society, humans, and this country, you should be speaking up the way I'm speaking up right now. You should be keeping it real. And here's another thing to keep in mind. If you're questioning, I really like Larry. I've listened to him a lot, but I don't know who to believe now. My other friends are sending me these other things. They're saying other things that are opposite to Larry. I just want to stay out of it. Think back 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, 15 years. Think about the people telling you the opposite of what I'm telling you. Think about it. Before this whole ridiculous movement started, before the propaganda through social media, before all this crap happened, who did you go to for knowledge? Who did you go to if you had a political question? Who did you go to if you had a legal question? Who did you go to if you really wanted to know about something? Did you go to Larry, or did you go to whoever that is sending you that meme? Who did you go to? Because if you went to me and you never would have thought of them, then don't listen to their memes and their nonsense. Go to the same guy you've been going to. I'm the same guy, and I'm telling you the truth. I've been telling you the truth. I tell the truth. You may not always like what I say. I may come off-putting sometimes. I may be a pain in the ass, but I tell you the truth. And I'm who you go to for answers, not that guy sending you the meme from your hometown. Stick to who you trust. I heard an interview with Bill Gates the other day. When Bill Gates said, he really truly thought that the internet would really democratize knowledge because everybody would have access to the internet and everybody would have access to this expansive knowledge base of information. But what he didn't count on was social networking and the proliferation of fraudulent, propagandized information, and that it's one of the worst things that's happened to our society, and he wishes he had foreseen it. And Bill Gates said that he's been looking back. He's been looking back through history, and he's been looking for other examples, and he said that when they invented the printing press, people weren't en masse reading about Copernicus's theories or scientific knowledge with the printing press. The highest selling things when the printing press was invented were how to catch a witch, how to find who a witch is, how to prosecute a witch. So humans have always had a proclivity toward the silly, the less knowledgeable, the mass hysteria. They've never had a proclivity towards actually getting in the weeds on what is intellectually important or, academically relevant. And so this is nothing new, but it's being exploited at an alarming clip by this society and those who have ill intentions for us. Do not fall victim for it. Stop following the troll accounts. Stop feeding the algorithm. Stop commenting on the troll accounts. Stop eating the nonsense and start getting down with the real. Listen to Logic and Larry. Share Logic and Larry. Talk to your friends about the things we talk about here. We are an intellectual army who is spreading knowledge. And I'm telling you, even those who liked MAGA or Trump are starting to get the message because they can't ignore the truth. They can't ignore the objectivity that we have on this show and the style and way that we approach discussion, proliferation of information, and debates. I see you out there. You see me. You hear me. I hear you. We go about our day job. They can't take our joy. We continue to spread art. We continue to do our jobs. We continue to do what's right for our neighbors and our community. We continue to take care of our families. But we never forget that we stand for what's right. We will never keep our mouth shut in the face of nefarious, lying, incompetent forces who want to fool us and pull the wool over our eyes. We refuse to do it. We will continue to fight for truth, honesty, diversity, multiculturalism, true Western values, true American freedoms and values. We will never bow down. We will never stop. I will never stop. A reminder that everything I say on this show is my personal opinion about matters of public importance. I'm not endorsing any candidate. I'm not endorsing any particular political platform or party. I'm just keeping it real. And you're allowed to do that too. It's not about party. It's not about politics. It's about truth and what's right. Keep it 150. Stay fiery inside, but don't let them take your joy or take you off focus. I will be back with you soon because we got to keep talking this through. We got to keep Logic and Larry going. We got to keep talking this through. I love you guys. I love you for listening. I love you for your minds and your mental openness. Keep doing you. Keep making the world a better place. Larry K is signing off from Newark.